Hello, and welcome to this webcast, Top 5 Tips to Maximize Forklift Tire Safety and Efficiency. My name is Roberto Michel. I am Senior Editor for Modern Materials Handling magazine, and I'll be your host for this webcast, being brought to you by MAXAM Tire, a global manufacturer and distributor of specialty tires, including tires for lift trucks. Many factors influence the safety and productivity levels that a lift truck fleet can achieve, from operator training to maintenance to appropriate choices for outfitting the truck, including its tires and any attachments you might use. In this session, you'll learn how selecting tires that match the job, the application, and the surface conditions, and aspects like tire inspection and maintenance contribute to enhanced productivity and safety. The presenters will cover how tire choice and tire maintenance can maximize uptime, the trend toward lithium batteries and the role tires play in that trend, and how to balance cost savings with performance and durability. Our co-presenters will be able to trends and explain what they mean for those running or maintaining industrial truck fleets. But before I introduce them, a couple of housekeeping items for those listening in. We'll have time for a short Q&A, so please submit any questions you may have using the feature for that on the webcast screen. We'll get to those questions later, and if we don't get to your question, we'll move it over to our presenters, and they'll be able to respond to you via email. So with that, I'd like to briefly introduce our presenters. We have with us today Robbie Gillis, Material Handling Segment Manager for MAXAM Tire North America. He has responsibility for sales and support strategy for the segment nationally. Welcome, Robbie. Also with us is Matt Fye, Material Handling Regional Manager for the Midwest for MAXAM Tire North America. Welcome also, Matt. Robbie, you're starting off, so welcome and please take it away.
Thanks, Roberto, and thank you all for attending. We're excited to be able to spend some time with you today to talk through the content here. Let's hop on in and see what we can't learn and provide some options and solutions for you. So here's the agenda, guys, just to start off and kind of frame everything up. I mean, obviously, we want to talk through forklift tire safety components today. As Roberto mentioned, different types of applications goes a long way in terms of safety and performance. We want to talk through some common tire breakdowns, causes, and solutions to make sure you guys are looking for the right things within your fleet and in your operations. Talk through some different tire replacements and opportunity costs. Take a look at what to inspect so you can actually curb and move through any situations that you may have, and then obviously go through some summary and go through some questions that are pertaining to the content. So as we get into it, let's before we dive into what we hope is, again, some great content, let's take a look at some safety stats just to kind of frame some things up here. As you notice, forklift accidents total around 25% of all construction accidents nationwide. Average cost of these types of claims can be over $41,000 as far as a workers' comp claim, and over $13,000 as an OSHA violation incident. You think about all of the operations that are going on out there, though, a lot of forklifts moving on the day-to-day. So lots of safety, certainly a big focus on safety to make sure we're doing what we can be doing to limit and make sure that these incidents, don't happen. All types of different injuries can happen, in forklift accidents, unfortunately, from anything from a bruise or a sprain up to catastrophic amputation or even worse. But what jumps off this page to me, again, looking over some of these OSHA stats, is 70% of these accidents can be prevented just with operator training, retraining, and process. So what we want to do is dig into that. How do we get out in front of these issues, prevent these issues just through some simple tire maintenance precautions? Matt, you want to hop in here? Let's jump into some different factors that maybe the audience could use to improve these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. We've really identified 5 common factors as it pertains to tire safety. Number one is going to be the environment. We want to look at, what type of warehouse, what type of application specific, is that truck going to be traveling in? Typically, we also want to look at the overall tidiness of that warehouse. Commonly, there will be debris found on a floor. Typical things that I've come across would be things like wood chips, metal shavings, screws and nails, even chemicals. things like that are going to be detrimental to the overall life of that tire. Similarly, the application is also crucial. Having the right tire for that application, and so we want to know, what is the specific function of that unit? Where does that unit travel? Does it go just indoors? Does it go outdoors? I'm up here in the Midwest. We deal with snow and ice and things like that. You have to take those things into consideration. But also you need to look at, what exactly is the unit lifting and what is the capacity of that unit? All of those factor into, finding the appropriate application there. The next thing we want to talk about is the equipment upkeep. It helps you to avoid those bigger problems. Expect what we inspect, right? We want to make sure that we're performing, proper maintenance, through PMs, through regular intervals, and keeping a safe eye on that wearable component. Similarly, we also want to do daily and pre-shift checklists. Again, performing, an eyes-on inspection of that equipment before we ever get on it and start operating, again, just to ensure that it's in good working order. Now, that also goes hand in hand with operator training. Making sure that those processes are being followed are crucial. But, overall training and understanding of the equipment that's being operated goes a long way towards ensuring, a safe environment. And, failure to train operators, often leads and results in, damage to property, damage to equipment, damage to the product, and most importantly, injury to the employees. And the last component we also want to briefly, touch on is warehouse efficiency. What we mean by that is laying out a footprint within your warehouse or your facility that minimizes the travel of that truck, that forklift. By doing so, by shrinking that footprint between, call it the warehouse and the shipping department, and eliminating travel, you're helping to keep the tires cool. And, that's the number one reason for failure is heat. So we really want to focus on that as we move forward.
Yeah, it's good stuff, Matt. I like the inspect what you expect. Certainly critical, right, to these sorts of things, as well as operator training. We talk about, what we just saw in the OSHA slides, or OSHA stat, as far as what training means to an overall safety program and certainly tire program. Let's hop into, we mentioned applications a couple times. It came up in those 5 big bullet points as far as what we want to cover. Obviously, there's different types of tires, Matt. There's different types of applications. You mind talking to us about the press-on and poly side of things?
Absolutely, yeah. So a press-on or a cushion rubber tire, it's the most common type of tire that you're going to find inside of a warehouse. Typically, that tire is going to be of smooth nature as it's not experiencing a whole lot of elements and things like that. But, unfortunately, we don't always have all the resources that we want to be able to, say, have all different types of trucks for different applications. So in many cases, you'll see a indoor style truck having a need to go outside. When you get into a scenario like that, even though it's not what we want, you're probably going to want to consider, a traction tire again for somebody that's dealing with more of the elements, not just a rough surface, but potentially weather. All of that plays a big factor. One thing though that I would also want to throw in here is, just a brief mention of traction tires. Traction tires are absolutely available for steer tires. However, it's really important to remember that all of the drive capacity comes from the front axle. And so putting a treaded tire on the steer really doesn't have a whole lot of benefit and actually can be counterproductive. When you have lug on a tire, if you're running over dock plates or you're running over material, things can get caught in there. And it's just one more reason for a tire to potentially fail.
Sure.
Now, a polyurethane is not terribly different, okay, than a cushion tire. It is going to be more application specific. It absolutely needs to stay indoors. If you're taking a tire like that outdoors, you're going to run into all kinds of problems, mainly damage, but also the operator comfort is going to be abysmal. That tire is made from a completely different type of product than rubber. So, we would actually refer to that as durometer. So durometer is the hardness of a material. a polyurethane wheel is going to be much stronger than a rubber tire. So all of that translates into vibration right through the tire, into the axle, into the truck, and probably up to the operator's back.
Yeah, I'm sure they love that, right? And just the audience, you take a look at the table there. There's obviously some checks and some X's about where these things are going to be optimal as far as performance and where they're actually going to live the best, right? So let me hop in a little bit on the resilient style, resilient or pneumatic shaped solid or just a solid. That's a tire that you're going to see a lot of, typically used in an outdoor heavy load capacity application, maybe where the potential for punctures is super high. Think Matt mentioned debris, sharp debris, rebar, nails, chunks of wood, whatever it may be, where you can't afford downtime or compromise safety with a rapid loss of air. So again, they're mostly going to be outside, outdoors, thinking about, pipe yards, brick yards, those sorts of applications. Long, heavy runs is where you're going to see them. Now, the pneumatic side of things, that's traditionally, that looks more like the tire that's on our cars out in the parking lot right now. It is an air tire, right? They can be used indoors and outdoors. Great for ride comfort, flotation, and durability. You'll find the cost is a bit less on those just because it's not a solid chunk of rubber. There is an air casing in there. But we want to make sure when we're looking at all applications and specifically pneumatics that we want to make sure that the application agrees to what you're doing. Make sure to check the environment of the operations. As you can imagine, a pneumatic or an air tire doesn't run as well with a piece of rebar through the sidewall. So take a look at those, take a look at the environment and match, the specific type of tire to the applicable operation that you're doing. Kind of talking about rapid air loss, Matt, and, let's dig into forklifts here a little bit with your background there. Obviously forklifts operate in different ways. We don't want to counterbalance or outweigh or, lose stability. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the forklifts and accidents and the fulcrum?
Certainly. Yeah. Don't really run into this safety topic necessarily creating a lot of tire failure, but it can happen from time to time. But I think just to take a 50,000 foot view, it's important for us to kind of talk a bit about the fulcrum on a forklift. So the fulcrum and the load center go hand in hand. So when we say fulcrum, what we mean by that, it's the area that falls between the center of the rear axle and the front wheels. And when you combine those, that creates what we consider to be the stability triangle. And so we can all appreciate that, for example, the further the load is out on a set of forks, the more that overall center of gravity is going to move forward. Now, the same can be said if you have no load on the forks, that center of gravity is going to move further back in that triangle towards the rear axle. Essentially, what we're trying to say here is we want to make sure that we maintain balance on that forklift, whether it's the tires, whether it's going on an embankment, whether it's having the product securely balanced on the fork truck. Anytime that we create a situation where that center of gravity comes outside of the stability triangle, we're leaving room and leaving ourselves susceptible for potential, equipment tipping, and we certainly don't want that.
Sure. Yeah. Great points there. Kind of on that, we've talked some tires, we've talked some forklift specific information here. Let's talk about these breakdowns. What are the folks going to be looking at that could cause a safety issue, an equipment issue, a damaged good issue? I think a lot of these things, guys, are pretty, I hate to say basic, but I mean, it's taking a look at your fleet, taking a look at your operation. So what we wanted to do is outline a couple mainstay type issues in the tire department where you could see breakdowns, where you could see issues that would lead to safety issues and performance decreases, right? Chipping and chunking and uneven wear, guys, are probably some of the most common that are out there. We've listed some causes and some solutions for you, but I mean, chipping and chunking ultimately comes down to what we talked about as far as environmental. If that person is just hitting dock plates each and every day, all those impacts are going to contribute to chunking and chipping of a tire that's going to lead to tire breakdown and potential safety issues. Uneven wear, noted here, there's some mechanical issues with the truck or potentially some misapplication, in terms of maybe needing a higher performance type or premium type tire, depending upon what you're doing. Think longer runs, heavier loads, those sorts of things. But again, there's some causes, there's some solutions. My biggest word of advice, though, would be be engaged with your fleet and the area of which your trucks are going in the truck paths. Matt, radial cracking, help us understand that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that's actually the most common damage that I've come across in my experience. And, a lot of that really comes down to, again, choosing the right tire for the application.
Sure.
Oftentimes, we don't have a choice, but if we're going on long runs with a forklift, meaning, hey, we're going from point A to point B, that being a long distance, at some point you're likely riding that forklift, without product on the forks. A forklift is designed to be moving product. And when you're not doing that, all of that weight then is on the counterweight, putting down pressure on those steer tires. Well, when you've got all that pressure against that tire, now it's in a sense, going over capacity. But that's creating, again, heat. And heat is the enemy of the tire. So over time, you're going to see that cracking start to go across the circumference of the tire, and it's going to break down in a matter of time.
That, just for the audience, if you're taking a look at that band there, that's what the cracks are, obviously going away from that band is the example of. So, great information there, Matt. Again, just some common things here. We'd go to some other, four other types of breakdown that you see. Matt mentioned, the enemy of tires, heat. It's funny, in the tire side of things, we say heat puts them together, and it certainly takes them apart as well. So a blowout there, you'll see the base cap separation. A lot of times, maybe it's a long, heavy load that this truck is running for you guys, and maybe it's just not the right tire as far as what's the staging of the tire. We'll get into that in a bit, but heat buildup is massive in terms of what it can do to tires. Obviously, create a tire failure. Some of these blowouts or separations could be major safety issues if not managed and taken care of. So you want to make sure that you're aligning your tire selection with what that truck is doing. You're hearing that a lot. Application is everything. Pitting and cupping and some flat spots. Pitting and cupping can often come from potentially bearing issues, but also maybe what that tire is going through, whether it be chemicals or salt or something like that would create some sort of issue within that rubber compounding. And flat spots, look, I mean, these are forklifts. They're not NASCARs per se, right? So we want to make sure that the drivers and operators are maintaining proper speeds, as they're carrying this material through your operation. And then also in braking, we want to make sure that it's not, hey, let's drive as fast as we can and kind of skid into that opportunity to pick up their load. So again, a lot of this stuff comes down to basics, guys, but it's important that it's at the forefront of your mind and your operator's mind to optimize tire performance as well as minimize and mitigate all safety issues. Speaking of application, we talked about what heat means to tires, and we think about that truck that's carrying that heavy load of whatever that may be, bricks across a long run in a hot environment. Intensity, guys, is really what we need to be measuring and cognizant of. Matt, you want to walk us through the intensity considerations that we should be looking at?
Yeah, 5 factors that we look at in intensity is, the overall hours run. That can be measured in, how long is a shift, but furthermore, how many shifts are in operation, the overall load that's going to be carried, the ground quality, is it smooth, is it rough, the overall distance traveled on a regular basis, and then, we want to talk about operator comfort.
Yeah.
So, as we look at these different tires in the graph that you see here, we're trying to kind of explain to you kind of a light use versus a heavy shift, heavy use application. Now, at the end of the day, there are, I guess, what we could consider to be like entry, standard, and premium levels of rubber that are going to be available, whether it's a press-on or a resilient tire. So, you want to be considerate of all these intensity factors when determining what's going to be the appropriate thing. And, at the end of the day, we want to keep our operators happy. So, as we think through, especially the amount of hours that are being run on that truck, at the end of the day, we don't want to be replacing tires left and right. So we do want to get an overall, long wear time on those tires. But mainly, one of the biggest differentiators is going to be on those resilient tires. And so these tires come in a 2-stage and a 3-stage. Now, backing up for a moment, want to mention, these resilient or pneumatic, solid pneumatic tires, they all come with a kind of a center core that creates the overall structure. And it is our recommendation that that when you're considering tires, look for something that's made of all natural rubber. And the reason that we say that is it's going to help you to disperse heat, and that is really going to be detrimental to the overall life of that tire. But the next major differentiator is going to be, again, in the 2-stage versus a 3. With a 3-stage, you get a cushion layer. And that cushion layer is everything when it comes to a rough environment where, again, all of that vibration is moving itself up through the truck. By having that cushion layer, you're not only giving another layer to disperse heat, but you're offering that operator a lot more comfort. So just things to consider as you get into those more intense applications.
Yeah, always want to keep the operator happy where we can, right? So
you know it.
This slide here, guys, is just going to kind of touch on, when you look at a forklift tire, the side of these things can be a little daunting sometimes with the way that we're measuring. And we wanted to provide some feedback. Hopefully you're wearing your tires out, you know what I mean, and not working them out, let's say, or so we wanted to provide some guidance on what does some of this sizing nomenclature mean? How do you look at this stuff? So, there's the 2 different types of tires, solids, that we've talked about, right? The press on is your common tire used inside warehouses. 21/7, very, very common drive tire that's out there. So we wanted to provide some guidance on it. If you just look at kind of the example underneath there, A is the outside diameter, right? That would be 21 inches. B would be the width of the steel band, right? So across the tire, right? And that would be 7 inches. And then C, 15, would be the wheel diameter of that hub. So that's what that means. It's a 21/7 15. Kind of basic there, but just wanted to get your head around it. Now, as far as the resilience, there's 3 different types of the resilient metrics. One is a 712, obviously a very, very common fitment in the forklift world, especially the outside of things. But the 7 would be the section width across, the width of the tire, right, by the rim diameter 12. So 712 with the rim, right? You take a look at the imperial style, 23 by 9 by 10. The outer diameter, again, 23 inches, right? The section width crossways 9, and the wheel diameter 10. And then the metric side of things, which sounds a little bit maybe more like our car tires, right? At 200 by 50 by 10. Again, the section width in 200, the width of that tire, going against the aspect ratio, 50% of the width, okay? And then again, the wheel diameter is as 10 inches. So wanted to provide a graphic, so obviously when the time comes for you to replace them, you understand, hey, how are these things measured? What does it look like? And maybe help you with that order as you're placing it with your service provider. Matt, speaking of 21, we talk about some of the widths. It's probably important to understand, hey, how should we be measuring, and maybe when is it time to remove? Can you help us that with maybe this tread check for?
Yeah, well, kind of 2 different ways to look at this, depending on the type of tire you're looking at. I guess starting with the press on, there's kind of a common rule of thumb that 2 inches of wear tends to be about the time that you want to replace that. But as a tire gets larger, that 2 inches expands to some degree.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, we mentioned lateral measuring on here. And basically what we mean by that is we want to measure from east to west and not north to south. And the reason we say that is, the bottom of your tire is going to have a flat spot on it. So you're not necessarily going to get an accurate measurement when you do that. So again, we want to go right across the center of that axle from east to west when measuring. Now, this is a 1-stage tire with the press on. So, the real consideration you have to have there is, if I need tread, do I still have it? And then furthermore, at what point am I starting to have diminished capacity on that tire? Now, an easy way to do it without looking at, using a tape measure as well, most tires are going to have what you would consider to be a wear line, roughly around that 2-inch mark. If it hits that point, your tire is ready for replacement. Now, not all manufacturers are going to, allow for that wear line. So some will just use the top of the brand label as that indicator. So again, same rule of thumb. If you get to that point, it's time to replace it. With the resilient or solid pneumatic tire, it's a little bit different. Yes, there is normally a wear line, and that certainly can be used from the sense of understanding that you're likely going to get into one of those second or third compounds and not actually the tread rubber. But we have to think, why did we get this pneumatic tire in the first place? We want to have tread. So I think the better way to look at that is, based on my application, is it okay that I don't have a lot of tread rubber or lug capacity? Because in many cases, you still have quite a bit of wearable rubber. But again, in a case like mine and a lot of our customers up here in the Midwest, you need that when it comes time with snow and things like that. So unfortunately, a tire here might not have a usable life that's quite as long as, say, a truck that might be from the south.
Yeah, good points. I mean, traction is kind of what you're getting to, but good rules of thumb, guys. Again, on the resilient style, check the J line. Most manufacturers have that J line right on the sidewall. And when you're getting down to the press-ons or looking at press-ons, rule of thumb, maybe top of where the manufacturing branding would be on the sidewall there. So appreciate that, Matt. Just a couple more, just to kind of build off that a bit. Some facts to remember when we're taking a look at what does tread wear mean? What does it mean for safety? What does it mean for performance? As the tire wears, it effectively shrinks, right? Because you're losing that usable rubber. In this instance, in these instances, when it gets super low, it's important to check this stuff, because obviously when it gets very low, the operator is going to take more of that shock. And again, we love our operators. They're going to be vocal to that. So we want to make sure that they're in a good position to perform. Too much shock, hey, look, hurts backs, and that's going to lead to downtime and lack of production and potential safety. That same shock that's hitting the operator's backs or knees or whatever is also more strain on the machine, more impact, more strain on the components, axles, bearings, you name it. The truck's just getting beat up. Stability could decrease as well as that tire shrinks. Load capacity, goes down, could go down. And then you look at energy consumption. Obviously, we're very in tune to consuming energy now. With things going battery powered, electric powered, the truck is going to have to consume more energy to push that load with the smaller tire. So definitely something to think about. We've got a checklist that we're going to share. We'll go through that in a second. But it's important to have tire inspections on these daily checklists and make sure that the your service provider, your PM provider, whoever that may be, is giving it a look as well. So all important things when leading to proper tire maintenance and safety precautions. Here's that checklist we were talking about, guys. Again, we can distribute out to those that attend, but it's nothing that's earth-shattering. It's basic maintenance, basic checklist, basic points of interest to take a look at as you're looking through your pre-shift on all of these machines. So in summary, let's try to wrap this up, Matt. I mean, we've talked about a bunch of different things here in terms of, environment, application, equipment, operator training, and warehouse efficiency. But let's kind of boil this down. It's our hope that hopefully you're able to action some of this information to improve your safety opportunities. And tire performance and optimization are certainly a direct contributor, to safe operations. And depending on your fleet size, your tire spend could be a big maintenance spend. So let's talk through, optimized performance. What does that mean? That's maintaining your environment and equipment and tires. It's going to lead to higher performance and safety standards, undoubtedly. Optimized production, forklift operators thrive in safe environments and equipment that is maintained. It's undoubtedly going to lead to their production for your business. Optimized safety, taking an interest in having your team members being aware of and committed to their environment and equipment will certainly improve the safety standards and ultimately minimize the opportunity for unsafe events. And I think that the most important thing that, obviously we've talked product a lot here and application stuff, but look, this is about our people. People first, people matter, right? If you ask any successful business leader, the key to success, and almost always they'll tell you, it comes from a committed team, their people. All of what we've discussed today, environment, equipment upkeep, operator training, tire types and applications all point to optimizing performance, production, and safety, which all points to prioritizing your people. So we hope that you're able to use some of these tools, some of these tips to improve your tire program, which ultimately is going to lead to a better safety program, and ultimately, happy people that are driving revenue in the right ways for your industry and for your business. So Any questions, Matt and I are happy to help. I think there'll be some contact information shot around, after the presentation, but we appreciate your time and are open to certainly any questions, guys, that are out there.
Yes, thank you, guys. This is Roberto Michel, and we do have some questions that have come in for you guys. I'll start off with you, Matt. What is the relationship between tire pricing and quality/performance? Someone asks.
Certainly. So, most manufacturers are going to offer kind of an entry level, a standard, and a premium option. And certainly, as we can all appreciate, those prices are going to, stair step up, as you get into those premium options. I think the real key takeaway there is finding the right tire for the right application at the end of the day. And, that comes down to the specific application and environment that truck's going to be operating in, and, making sure that we're covering the hours of usage and also the operator comfort. And if we do that and we marry up the right tire for that application, the real goal is to actually lower that overall cost per hour over the entire life of the tire.
Meaning acquisition costs. Sorry, Roberto. And just to kind of piggyback on that, acquisition costs certainly is, I don't know, I think I've heard it called sticker shock, right? But it's, look, if you're spending maybe a little bit more on the front end, but you're not having to replace that tire 2 and 3 times, throughout the year, think about what that does, to your overall spend, right? You're putting that money right back at the bottom of the P&L where it belongs.
Okay, good point. Another one I wanted to pose, it's come in here. Do I need traction tires on my indoor forklift? I know you guys covered this a little bit under tires, but could you expound on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that a lot of OE trucks will show up with traction on your steers, or on the steers. I would argue no. I don't think you need traction tires on the steer position. I think that you want, look, a smooth tire, you're going to get more life out of. You're going to get more hours out of. And in that steer position, there's no power really going to that. You're just giving opportunity for things to get into that tread, chunk that tread out, lead to tire breakdown, lead to tire failure, when you don't need it. Ultimately, the drive tires up front are going to be maybe where you need some traction, but steers definitely should have smooth tires on there.
Okay. Yeah. Another question that's come in, I'll just get right into this. Should I be getting as many hours on a marking versus a non-marking tire? How many hours can I expect on one type versus the other?
Great question. Determining the amount of hours that you're going to get on any tire is really specific to the application, and it's hard to really pinpoint what that number would be. But, breaking down the basic difference between a standard, marking tire and a non-marking tire, it's important to understand there is less carbon applied to a marking tire. Now, the carbon is the element within a forklift tire that helps create that structural stability. So, while we need those non-marking tires for certain applications, especially like painted surfaces, areas where we don't want to mark any surfaces, we're really left with no choice. But it's important to note that non-marking tire is not going to last as long, and it's going to come at a premium price to the standard tire.
Yeah, just to jump in, Matt, just to clarify, so the non-marking tire, like Matt said, it's not going to last as long, and it's because there isn't the carbon black that's in there, right? So that's what helps the construction of the tire and the performance of the tire, the longevity of the tire. So yeah, it's by application, but unfortunately the run out isn't going to be as great.
Okay, we do have one more question, and I think this might refer to some of your product names. How does standard versus Halo Swift tires impact safety?
Geez, we've been hearing a lot about this, Matt. So it's interesting. It's to get in the weeds a little bit. It's that Halo is or Swift style is a tire that actually doesn't have a lock ring on it. And this varies many times by the truck manufacturer themselves, You know what I mean? So there's not really, from a safety perspective, there's not really a difference between, a halo or a standard or a halo, also known as a swift lock or a quick lock. That is by machine manufacturer. So I think for us, we would lend our guidance on, hey, if this particular truck manufacturer produces this truck and it's got a lock ring style tire on it, our guidance would be, hey, stick with that lock ring style. That's what the truck manufacturer prefers, and per their performance metrics, that's what you should have. So we would go with that. And on the other side of that, if this truck manufacturers push this truck out with a quick style or swift or halo or lock, however you want to describe that, that's probably what that truck should be wearing. You know what I mean? As far as per what the truck manufacturer decided for performance, safety, stick with what comes from the OE. But as far as a difference there's not really a difference. There might be a little bit of an increase, a couple points, from buying the Swift lock rather than the standard. But our rule of thumb would be stick with what came on it where you can, and keep going with your operation.
Okay. Thank you, Robbie and Matt, for your presentation. I learned a lot. So I want to remind those in the audience that this presentation is available for download, and contact information for Maxim and these gentlemen is right on there. So please go ahead and download that if you wish. And if we didn't get to your question in time, we will forward that to Maxim. So that does conclude our presentation. Thanks for listening in.